So that's really like, talk about a Leviathan, right? Like that's
a Hydra, my friend.
Yeah, that's like, right? So big. I even had a member of my team, Karen, I was paying her to go back through the books and update the timeline and go through everything. Like for all the Bianca books aren't even in there. Bianca's like my flagship. Like she's in Hollywood. Like everyone knows me for Bianca, but all of her books aren't even on my timeline. Right? Like,
the stories we've read capture our attention and immerse our minds in settings of all kinds to bring us the spectrum of feelings and deliver the tale of tales to our starving psyches.
Whether it's medieval-style fantasy with mages and knights,
or hard sci-fi takes on the future of space colonization,
or thrillers set in your backyard, world building is the foundation that holds up the narrative, the glue that keeps it from unraveling as readers follow the journey you laid out for them, all to make the stories jump from the pages and burn themselves into our memories.
Welcome, weary writers, to Book Career in a Year's network of podcasts. This is Worlds Asunder, an insightful podcast on world and character building.
My co-host is the one and only David Shadoin, better known as Shady. It's not just a descriptor, it's also his moniker.
And she's the H.Y. Gregor, but you can call her Haley or Sour Patch, your friendly post-apocalyptic wasteland elf.
We know. We have nearly a score of published novels and short stories between us, but who the hell are we to teach you about world building and character development? We get it, which is why we decided to call in some favors.
Each week, we pull from a list of the best and brightest authors, editors, and publishers to give tips and guidance on tackling the age-old questions and provide you with tools on how to accomplish world building like the pros. From environment to magic to characters, how do we strike a balance between what matters to our audiences and what matters to keep it all straight? Open up your ear holes.
And your minds.
And get ready for us to tear Worlds Asunder.
So, if you're ready,
just knock and enter.
So we're still trying to catch it up, but it is the game changer for writing books in a consistent way that fosters trust between the reader and the author, because I have the same information from book to book to book.
So 7 years in, you started realizing this was serious. How long did it take, or how much time did you put into building the system, so to speak? How much effort went into like those early days of gathering everything, and where did you start? Yeah.
I started with the book I was on and I went from there. I have not spent time going back to previous books unless I had to do a future book.
Gotcha.
Because it's just too much of a time suck. Like I don't have the time nor desire to go back in time. And that's why I've been paying Karen. And she's honestly like volunteered most of her time. I don't even think she's let me pay her. I just harness my rock star readers. No, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Like, all the people on my team were readers, and they're just like, we want to help. We want to be part of your team. And I'll be like, cool, come put stuff in a spreadsheet. Right. So Karen, she just like loves being in Alkarra. And so she'll just read the books and do it when it feels good to her. And it's pretty great. So I would, if you have a Leviathan and you're just starting, don't go backwards, always go forward, right? Always go forward. So I would just start right now. It's going to be too overwhelming otherwise. You're going to get lost in it. You're going to stop writing. Just start right now and then do the rest by necessity. So go back if you have to. So what I did for some Bianca books, I went and just skimmed through the book and figured out time passage. And I just had I had 2 columns, beginning of the Forgotten Gods, end of the Forgotten Gods. This is where the time passed. This is where ages are. Boom. I'm going into the next book, because otherwise it'll just be too much of a time suck for sure.
Well, and I think that that's a good tip too, because I know that I can't be alone in this. I kind of have the impulse that if I'm going to start something, I need to start at the beginning of that thing. There's, like a compulsive urge to do the thing completely. And so starting in the middle might be kind of hard, but you got to cut your losses and be realistic about your progress, right? Like you can't spend all of your time going back if it's going to slow you down.
Or just realign your goals. So if your goal is to make money at this, you got to produce books. You can't get stuck in spreadsheets. But like if you're doing this for love of world building and for love of your own world, then maybe you totally can say, forget that. I'm going to world build for 2 months and I'm going to catch this Leviathan up. And you're happy. I think that's what matters.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of you have to do it this way. I would say you look at your goals and the desired end state and then recalibrate accordingly, because it's going to be different for everybody, right?
So when you when you did finally start doing the spreadsheet, did you start it with the timeline sheet, or did you start with like characters? Like, where does your mind start first?
So I just pulled up Google Drive. I grabbed a sheet and I just started the timeline. And because at the time I was like, I don't know how much time has passed with the Bianca books. I have to go into book 5. I think that's when I started. I think I actually started at book 6 after I had a horrible time writing book 5 because I'd been away from Bianca for 3 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot so much stuff after I tried to write 5. And so I think when I went into 6, I was like, these are just the things I need to keep track of. How many days have passed since this started? Right? Like, and how old is she and what day is it? Like, those were like my 3 starting points. Like, what day is it? What scene is it? And how old is she? And that is where it started. And then I realized, oh, I actually need to be tracking every single scene in order to really watch my flow. And then I realized I could use it to track other things in the plot, like how many grimoires and how many rooms and how many books were in the library as the library grew. Well, I can easily track that on there too. And then timeline and year was really the first one. And then I realized I've double named a character, I don't know, Jamie or something. And so then I was like, I'm just going to start putting characters in as soon as I think about it. But then what I realized was I was trying to do this during the first draft and it was interrupting my drafting. I couldn't get the story out. So I made a rule, like nothing gets in the way of the first draft.
That was going to be my next question.
Yep. Nothing gets in the way of the first draft for me. So I just get that sucker out. And then the second draft is where I make it prettier. The third draft is where I make it pretty. And then after people have torn it apart and made it bloody, that's when we make it beautiful. Right. So we can't really do the timeline when it's fudge and ugly, right? Which is the first draft. So that was the other tidbit that I picked up in my process, was to really focus on timeline in the second draft.
Well, and we always say, like, everyone is going to have a different process. I don't love when someone says this is the only way. But it should be noted when Katie says, this is what makes my drafts quick, my first drafts done. She should tell us how fast she writes, how many books she puts out, because this is a good tip if you are looking to produce more.
Yeah. So I publish a new novel the first Friday of every month. And the novels are on average about 85,000 words. Some have been over 100, some have been like 75. But on average, it's like a full-length fantasy novel every month. And when I'm first drafting, I'll first draft anywhere from 10 to 15,000 words a day, which is freakish, right? But I'm also writing for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm not stopping. Like, I just like love to write. And I'm not like worried about the timeline. I'm not worried about anything. I just like get the story out of my brain and onto the paper. So knowing that the efficiency and organization is going to come in the second draft because of the spreadsheet is what makes that possible, right? I don't have to worry about what goes where. I'm just getting the story all the way from start to finish and then doing the spreadsheet second.
I need to take a leaf out of your book because I think that's great. I think I should move my system around a little bit.
If you want different results, right? Like if you want to write faster and more efficiently, or maybe you're just tired of like deleting 50,000 words out of a manuscript because you keep messing up or whatever. Like maybe there's just some other goal that you have here. The spreadsheet can just like narrow your focus into what's moving right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of I like that too. Having just done essentially a noir mystery thriller, right? There's a lot of pieces to keep track of where you have to focus on what's moving right now. And I did a lot of and my co-writer Casey Azell will attest to this. I did a lot of stuttering because I was having problems reconciling. It's like, oh, did I make sure to trap this? And she goes, no, forget about it. Get through writing everything down, right? Get through what you want it to look like, and then go back and fix the things that need to be fixed. Because what ended up happening was like we changed the ending on the book completely from what we originally drafted, or what we had originally planned for. And that's one of the things that like doesn't come up unless you just write and then figure out, oh, I actually have this like better idea and I think it'll play better.
Yes, exactly.
So I really do like the do what's moving right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can also I've color coded the spreadsheet before. So every time Bianca's love interest is Merrick, every time Merrick pops up, he gets like a pink box. And then I can scoot around and see, oh, we haven't had a Merrick scene in a while, and they're not going to like that, right? Like, so, or like Or the red herring shows up here. So you do like bright red on the spreadsheet and you need to be like, oh, I kind of need my red herring to show up again around here. Or it's been this many scenes, like, because you're in it. You don't always see it. So for people that are really visual like me, it's a game changer because you don't have to like scroll through Microsoft Word or figure out Scrivener. You can just kind of look at it from a bird's eye view and say, oh, right. Or like, I need 4 years to pass. Where is everybody? Like, what's going on here? So yeah, it's what you want. And the other thing too is for some people, the first draft is the fun part. Like they want to spend their time. They want to breathe into it. They want the slow burn. Like Frog and Esther Jones, I don't know if you guys have ever met them.
Yeah.
They just really love the slow burn writing process. Frog's like, I love to pick it up for an hour one day, sink into it, put it away, pick it up for an hour the next day. And I'm over here like a glutton, like, man, how do you stop? Right? Because I just want to write for like 6 hours. I just want to sink into it. But that's not fun for Frog. That's not fun for him. Just like an hour is not fun for me. I'm like, this is a joke, right? So again, the spreadsheet can still help so that maybe you are sinking more into it in that 1 hour you have because you're not trying to figure out all these other questions for the first 20 minutes. You can just look at the spreadsheet and see where you left off to go into the next scene.
Yeah. It is kind of a, you know, for those of us who are not writing 6 to 8 hours a day, it is nice to have that organization because it does make it a little easier to jump right back into where you left off if you kind of know it. And one of the things that I had to start doing was I would like if there was something where I was mid thought, but I had to absolutely break it off because I'm moving on to whatever's next in my life or whatever. Like I would leave just a quick blurb of this is what I had in mind. So that way I don't forget it.
Yeah. So smart. Yeah. Like I'm always, I always say future Katie needs this. Just give me a minute, to my kids. Right. So I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, or like to my husband, I'm like, just give me 5 seconds. Future Katie needs this information. Yeah, and now they understand that like, I'm going to forget. And there's been so many times I'm like, oh, bless you, past Katie. Like, thank you. Like, I would have forgotten that entirely. Like if I do the dishes before I go to bed in the morning, I'm like, yay, past Katie. Like the dishes are done or something. I do that with writing all the time. And the spreadsheet is sort of that act of I'm doing something for myself in the future as much as right now.
I'm not so nice to future Shady. Screw that guy. What has he done for me?
Yeah. I'm disappointed in past Haley a lot more than I'm grateful for the things that she's done.
I did that today. A whole nother podcast.
I know. No, I was writing a D&D, a 5e adventure today, and I got to what I thought was a really good stopping point. And I was like, great, I'm going to go, I have a podcast tonight. Like I'm going to go shower, change my clothes. And then I came back to it and I was like, oh no, what have I, because like I stepped away for half an hour and then I had no idea what I was doing anymore.
I've done that too. It'll come back or something better will come.
Well, I finished it and sent it off tonight. So I hope that I figured it out.
It'll be fine.
Welcome to Organization is the Devil or Chaos is Your Friend podcast.
Yeah, learn how to not do things the way that I do them, which is why we bring in brilliant people to interview, because you can listen to what Katie says.
I think brilliance is an interesting approach when really it's just like I've failed a lot. Like it's I don't know that it's as much brilliance as just like being in the trenches.
Do you
know?
It's sorry, J. Scott Savage.
I know the name.
So he writes for Shadow Mountain, Lisa Mangum. It's a
Okay.
Anyway, he writes mostly middle grade, but he has a really, really good keynote that he talks about failing specifically. And he's like, if you think about it as a mountain, don't think about it as falling backwards. Every failure is a step forward. It's just maybe it's not as big a step as you want it to be, right? Like everything is still leading you to your goal as long as you stay focused. And I think that's an important mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
And, and that kind of brings up that piece too, right? Like we all have our failures. We all have things that we, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, getting over the things that are holding you back personally, but we're all going to fail at something, right? We're not perfect. We don't do things perfectly. And you have just found a way to turn your failures into success, right? You found a way to make them work for you.
I think too, like part of it was I had a friend challenge me and say, why do you keep saying failure? Like you're just pivoting. And I was like, shut up. Like that's brilliant, right? So it takes the like failure is such a gross word. And I used it a bunch tonight. So I'm like admonishing myself as much as anyone here. But failure, yes, gosh, damn her. Failure is like such a loaded word for us, right? Like, especially in the US, like we're American spirit, right? Failure is such a loaded word, but really it's like, oh, I just have to pivot. So we're on this mountain and we're on shale and sliding backward. But it just means that you got to pivot to a different trail, man. Like, it doesn't mean you're off the mountain. You're still on the mountain. It's just, you're just at a pivot point. And that's, I've just done a lot of pivoting. I could dance for hours with the pivoting that I've done, right? But then I gained experience from it and I stayed on the mountain. And so that's why that's sometimes the difference is sometimes people start climbing the mountain and they're like, I don't want this mountain, right? And so that's great. Don't be on the mountain if you don't want it.
Yeah.
Or some people just stop and world build on the mountain.
Set up camp for a little bit, draw a picture.
Sometimes we need a little campfire, right? We just need to like take a break.
Speaking of pictures, though, I really want to talk about this. If I can share my screen for a second. And hopefully what you're seeing is,
Yay!
That and not, like my personal Discord or something. Zoom out on this a little bit. Oh, did we decide this doesn't zoom very well? There it is.
If it's my website, I probably know.
No, it's
the sharing screen has a zoom problem.
Scroll down problem, apparently.
It's looking good to me.
I can see most of it. Maybe what you guys can see is different than what I've got. But okay, so I love maps. Like, one of my favorite things about like Lord of the Rings or like Skyrim and Oblivion back in the day, anything that I've ever done, if it has a map, like I want it on my wall. I think they're amazing. So you have this huge sweeping world. My first question will be, when did you get a map?
I had a reader reach out like 2 or 3 years after I published Bianca, and he was like, I really want to do your map. And I was like, I really want you to do my map. Sweet, let's do it. So we did this really fun map, and it forced me to establish where is Chatham Castle, where is the Central Network, like where are things? It forced me to establish everything, which was great. So he did like a Central Network map, and then he did a big world map. And then Incarnate came out, or I learned about Incarnate like 2 years ago or something. And I was like, sweet. Yeah. So we decided to redo the map on Incarnate. So I did an SOP for my virtual assistant. And then I was like, this is too overwhelming for me. Can you like figure out how to do this and give me a bullet point list of how to do it? And then I'll show you the landmass and you can make it pretty. But what ended up happening is, my father-in-law was here and he's like a huge Tolkien fan, right? Like he loves Tolkien and he loves maps and he loves fantasy. So I was like, so like critique my map. He's like, really? It's like, yeah. And then I was like, oh no, because he did. What if like, it doesn't make any sense? And he like bled all over my map. So I was like, sit your butt down. Let's do this together. Right. So for 2 hours, I'm such a bad map maker. So he was like, well, does it fit with your lore? Like maybe you have this over here. Maybe there's mountains here. So he's like talking me through it. We were having so much fun. And so we ended up settling on this so that I had something to give my readers that I could control and change from story to story. So for a while we were doing, new maps, like here we're in the Central Network, in this book we have here. So I wanted to establish an Incarnate so I could do it myself or say to my VA, like, hey, go do this other map for me according to this timeline, because every series occurs like at totally different times, right? And so Alkarra looks different from book to book to book. So that gives us the ability to then say, yeah. So I just published The Great Library of Berk, which happens 1,500 years before Bianca. And so all of that forest that's in the middle there doesn't exist yet. And so Alkarra is going to look totally different for that. So we could just copy that map and wipe it out and figure out what the world does look like. So that's why I did that. And then we wanted to give the offering to people because they were wanting signed maps and free maps. And so that's why we did it. I honestly cringe every time I see it. Just because I'm not like a map maker, but it suffices, right?
Well, so you already answered. So one of my questions I was going to say is, do you have a lot? Because this is the only one on your website that's, like readily available. Mm-hmm. But so it totally makes sense for every story that you delve into a more specific area, you go in and you build it out. And then, are those, I'm assuming, in the books since they've been
sometimes
created?
That was like the goal, but whether it happens is something to be desired. But for example, in the Great Library of Berk, The Great Library of Berk starts out as a shack, and then it becomes this structure so large you can't even encompass it, right? Like it's 1,500 years old by the time we meet Bianca. It was a story that my readers requested. They wanted the origin story for the Great Library of Berk, because even though it's a magical library, it is like a character now.
Oh.
Now it's like so big. So what I did is, as I was in the second draft and writing, I went and mapped out each floor that's like added in the chapter, so they could see with each new chapter the new addition to the Great Library of Berk. So we have stuff like that. We have we're going to do a map for like the different series. There's like a bunch of different things we did. We haven't uploaded them, but that's more like I haven't thought of it or tasked Samantha to do it yet. So we have them, and it's great just because the readers want it.
So is this, you're probably going to get angry at me for even asking, based on what you've said about maps, is this to scale? Do you have like
oh no.
Because some people, when I was working within the Eldritch Legacy, they had very intense maps. And one of the things that they had done was they had a very specific scale. That was, this is how long this is. And you had to work like, okay, how long is it going to take my characters to get from A to, so the question is, do you bother, or, how much thought goes into that? Not for you.
No. Just because life is too short for me to focus on that. And I don't derive joy from those details. Right. And so I'm not going to focus my time on it. And I'm not going to pay someone to focus their time on it, because I very much believe in the way I want to show up in the world is exactly as I am. And that's like an imperfect creature that's like here because I love Alkarra. And so anyone could look at that map and like the first map that Jason and I did, the rivers were running the wrong way. Like, seriously? It's embarrassing when you think about it. But I've learned over time, like, if I get so locked into those details, I start to obsess over perfectionism, and I start to like edge back into fear. So for me, it's like B+ work, ship it. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. I think Seth Godin, I don't know. I'm probably wrongly attributing it, but it's like, it's not perfect, right? Like there's no scale, but it is good enough and a little bit better than good enough. It's what my readers want. And if it's imperfect, I'm just going to send it out. So no, there's no scale. It's also a fantasy map. I didn't want to like put myself to a scale and have to figure out like, they don't have miles. So what do you call it? And how many miles in the Central Kingdom? And then like, well, if there's so many miles, your population density is such and such. And that means your city is this big. And like you have city boundaries. And I was like, oh, we're not going to do that. So,
the best part is we're going to have Chuck Gannon on at some point, and he's going to delve right into all of that.
Great. Right. Because he finds joy in that.
Yeah.
And I find none. And so he's probably like, I would never release something that's not that detailed and it's just more flowy creative. And I'm like, I got you, boo. You do the detailed side. I'll do the not detailed side. And together we'll be a completed circle, right? Like I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right,
Batman and I will be besties. I think that goes back though to knowing how you want to show up in the world as an author and knowing what your goals are.
Yeah. And what your passion
My goal is not. Yeah, my goal is not a perfect map, and that's okay. So no one has ever critiqued my map to my face, except my father-in-law. But I was asking him to, right? So I don't know, maybe it's a crappy map, but who cares?
I think it's cool. I love maps, and I thought it was cool. That does kind of bring me to another question, though. So you made the choice to not do a lot of those more detailed things with your map, but that has had repercussions for your story. In the world is shaping the way your characters perceive things, because they're not perceiving things in miles. They're thinking of it more as how many days does it take to travel here? Or so are there any other sort of specific implications that has had that you've noticed? And it's kind of a strange question, maybe.
Specifically from the map?
Mm-hmm.
Not really, because my witches can like transport. Like with magic, they can go wherever they want.
So it wasn't a necessity for you. It didn't serve the story to build that out. It doesn't make any sense.
Unless like they haven't learned like the magic of transporting yet, then they like Bianca had to ride a carriage for like 2 or 3 days to get to the Eastern Network or whatever, right? So there was at one point implications where I had to be like, this has to be not too long, but long enough and blah, 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 whatever. But even then it comes down to my readers are looking for an escape. Right? They're looking for Bianca. They're looking to connect with Bianca or Sana or Isadora or Vittoria or Ray or whoever. They're looking to connect with these people and be in literally be in Alkarra. I get emails every single day where people are like, I'm I was just diagnosed with cancer. My husband just died. My son is in the hospital, whatever it is they say every day. And they say, I just want somewhere else to be. So I'm not going to waste my time obsessing over scale for map when my reader is not going to be like, seriously, Katie, it was 4 days here, but to go from the Western network to here was 5 days. Like, no one is ever worried about those details in my readership because they are coming for a different reason. Mm-hmm. So I strive to do the best I can for details, but I'm more focused on like the overall story. And it's not that big a deal when your witches can just travel wherever they want by magic. So I have not, to answer your question in a roundabout way, I haven't yet seen other repercussions except like the structure of the land, maybe like if I put a certain port somewhere or whatever, but I didn't put that many details because I didn't want to be stuck in it. And so I have the castles and that's pretty much it.
Right. Well, and repercussions may be negative, but I more meant like, what are your little echoes from the pebble that you threw in the lake from that? But that's great, I think. Sorry, Shady.
No, you're good. I was letting you continue your question because I was going to make a callback. You brought up D&D, right? And there's a little bit of what Katie was saying is that she is not only
just went out.
Making herself happy, but she's also she's gone.
Hey,
I'm like, you guys totally froze. It's probably my internet.
The best part about this is it records on all three ends, so I'm gonna get whatever you were doing. I'm gonna capture it. It's gonna be great.
Perfect.
But no, so it's like D&D. There's multiple ways to do this, and I kind of got my writing start by DMing for D&D. And there are groups that want to play like they don't care about the realism, right? I don't want to have to track every arrow or eating every meal, things like that. But then there are some groups that absolutely love that, and I'm like, if that's what you want to do it. And you're in the camp where that's not something that makes you happy, right? So you're going to write the books that way, which will attract a very particular readership. You might attract some of that other group that kind of wants that realism of scale, kind of like Tolkienism, kind of stuff. But at the same time, like you're not hiding the fact that, hey, I'm not going to give you that because that's not my way.
Yeah, and it's great for people to know you can have an incredibly successful series and you can have a map and you don't have to kill yourself over those details if you aren't inclined or if it doesn't make sense. That's an iceberg thing that you don't have to go there. We just need to. And
also, I did a post in my Facebook group and I said, I'm doing a map. What do you want on it?
Oh, cool.
Nice.
So I gave them what they wanted. like super easy, actually. Like, sweet. That's awesome. So that was what they wanted. They wanted the network boundaries. They wanted the castles. They wanted the oceans, all that kind of stuff. So it was actually pretty simple.
Well, it worked. I like it.
Thanks.
I think for me, like one kind of closing question. I don't know if there's anything else, Katie, that you have that you think is, really important to communicate to listeners, or if Shady has any more questions, but I'll shoot this one out there. So you said that you were working on something else. You're diversifying, adding a little bit more to your portfolio, and that you started this tracking process immediately. Mm-hmm. Where did you start and what did you do differently? And since your spreadsheet was kind of an editing process, since you didn't do it in your first draft, how much did you lay out before you started writing?
Ooh, great question. So what I lay out before I write is usually a 7,000 to 10,000 word outline where I have all my plot points and I have scenes and they're extremely high level. Like some scenes are a sentence, some scenes are a paragraph. That's it. What I did with this new series is I opened up Google Drive, put it in the folder for this book, created the spreadsheet, and then I started with timeline and characters. And then I just copied the column from the Alkarra timeline and I just put it in there. And then I ignored it. And then I went into characters and I just started writing down all the characters that I had decided and identifying characteristics. So like Alyssa has like curly light hair and it's long or whatever. And I can't even remember my characters' names. So I just started putting down the actual characters, what they did, where they were from, and any information I had about them at that point in the game. Because sometimes I would decide on a character name in the outlining process and I'd forget that name and I don't want to go through the outline to find it. So then I could just go to the character sheet. And then I wrote the entire first draft and I totally ignored the timeline and I figured out what else I needed to track. So there are different magic potions like in this world there are these people, the Nikians, that are really known for their potion making. And so I had 3 potions. And so I made a separate tab that says potions. And I just wrote those down in the second draft. So when I went through the second draft, I just did the same as before. And I just started right with scene 1 in the timeline and started marching through any characters I hadn't got in. I put in anything else I needed to track. This other world I'm doing, it's like a Court of Thorn and Roses, but on the high seas and without fairies, right? So it's just that like romantic-y, kind of like high action, deep love kind of feel, but it's on the high seas. So there's like pirates, and then there's just hundreds of islands in this island change, and every island has a different magic. And so I started tracking the island names and their magic in a separate one. So I let necessity dictate what the spreadsheet looks like. It looks nothing like my Alkarra one, except it has timeline and characters. That's it.
Don't force it. Let it grow naturally.
Yeah. Like out of what do you need to know and what do you need to track, and then let it flow from there.
Very cool. So most of the guests we've had on so far have a nonfiction book published in essentially how to write, doing stuff like that. So when are we expecting yours to publish? And completely unrelated,
do you need beta readers? I can volunteer.
You want a beta read for me?
No, I can volunteer.
Oh, please don't volunteer me. I haven't. I'm so far behind on my reading pile.
He has podcasts.
No. Yeah, I'm too busy podcasting. I can't beta read anymore.
Dr. Dewey, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. And then what is your favorite series? What series kind of spoke to you reading wise as far as like world building goes?
So of my books, my favorite series, or out in the world favorite series?
Out in the world. Even if it is your books, out in the world.
Oh, okay. It's not my books. So first answer is I have a really, really, really ironclad boundary right now, and that I don't work for authors, right? I work for readers. And so I don't have any nonfiction books for writers. I don't have a course. I don't have an email list. I don't have blog posts. I don't have anything for writers except great books that you can read. So sorry, can't help you there, but I'm always happy to like come on and chat about my process. If you have questions, you can email me. My website's kattiecrossbooks.com. You can send me questions there. But in terms of favorite series for world building, I have a couple. So I almost always bring these books up, and it just makes me laugh every time. Little House on the Prairie, the Laura Ingalls Wilder series, for consistency, just for consistency. In that she goes to all these different places, and it spans like her early life, like 20 years. But there is a consistent narrative flow that you know what to expect in every book, and she delivers. I think she's phenomenal with that. She's one of my favorite. I devoured her growing up, and she's a comfort read to me today.
It's been a while for me. It's been a long time.
Oh, I love it. From Laura Ingalls Wilder, I learned a lot about the power of trust and consistency in our fiction to draw more readers in. And that's what Laura Ingalls Wilder does for me. I mentioned Akatar, which is A Court of Thorn and Roses. I just finished the first 3 books in that series. So that one's on my mind a lot for world building, just in terms of Sarah J. Maas took all of these tropes and like turned them on their heads. And I think she did a really cool job with that. Like she took a Beauty and the Beast retelling with paranormal shifters, with high fae, and like paranormal romance. Like it was like, what just happened here? I didn't know what to expect going into that book. I just always have readers asking if my books are like Sarah J. Maas. So I wanted to read them so I could be honest when I'm saying yes, because I've read some of her other stuff. That one for world building, in terms of actually having like new magic, new realms, new worlds, is really interesting to kind of go across her books. But she's a little more character driven than world building driven. So she doesn't have a lot of depth in that one right now. Another one that I'm really liking is Lydia Scherer. She writes the Hocus Pocus. It's contemporary, and it's about this witch. She's a wizard. Sebastian is a witch, and she has a talking cat. And that one is super interesting because she has a very hard magic system where Lily Singer has to actually use specific runes and spells and access source energy. And like, she's a librarian in this museum, and, you know, she's like, it's a very hard, crunchy magic. It's very contemporary and current. And that's really fun for world building because she has to focus on an entirely different sort of magic than I do. So I really recommend Lydia. And my readers are obsessed with Lydia's books. We always hear, probably a couple times a month, both of us hear from readers that say, I found you because of Katie, or I found you because of Lydia. Like we're always swapping readers. So my readers tend to love her books even though they're contemporary and totally different. So if you're looking for totally different series to learn different aspects of world building from, those 3 are really interesting.
Yeah, and I've read what was it, the Throne of Glass series from
I think I might
Sarah
have
J.
read
Maas.
that. Yeah, I don't remember.
I have not, but I have played the cat magic game that is based off of Lydia's series. I've not read those. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't played it yet.
It's fun. Your kids will like it.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Like, it's difficult enough.
Okay.
It's like engaging for adults, but it's really easy, and kids should be able to pick it up. So.
Oh, awesome! I'll try. Yeah. Perfect.
Well, that's all I have. No, I mean we could talk. We could plug Dave Sure there too. Cat Magic.
Game, love it.
Cat Magic. Yeah. The Dragon Award, was it a finalist last year, or was it just a nominee? I remember we were working on that for him last year. I can't remember. I think it was a finalist.
I thought it made it to finalism.
I know that I think it lost to, like, Magic the Gathering. Go figure. You know.
Turns out MTG has a lot of followers.
I feel like, though, after this that we need to expand and do a segment on, like, I say author mental health lightly, but like because a lot of the stuff that Katie, you talked about, letting yourself not fear success, right? Because I don't think a lot of people think about it like that, but in some ways that's really what it is. And identifying those kinds of obstacles, I think, can make a really, really big difference.
Yeah. So a lot of the times when I'm either at cons or writer conventions, they have me like come up and talk about that. Mm-hmm. Claire Taylor's another really good one to follow. She actually has books and stuff on it. I just talk about it to people. Claire Taylor's a good one, but it is the game changer, right? And a lot of people think that fear of success, it's like some people don't know that's a token thing. Everyone's heard of fear of failure, mm-hmm. right? But actually I find in myself and others that I talk to, fear of success is actually much more prevalent. It's just not as known. We inherently fear that great success would change us. So it would be really interesting to like dive into that with the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I would totally love to do that because we can lay open all of my pivoting.
I think that success changing me is a problem that I would love to tackle. I would love to have that. It's be one of my trials in life. So.
Yeah, you say that. You say that. It's true. It's true. Everyone says that when I mention fear of success, but if you dive in there, it's there for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Even in world building, mindset is everything. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll have you and a few others back on and definitely delve into that a little bit because everybody deals with it a little differently too, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own way of tackling that, and that's helpful to know as well. Mm-hmm. So look for that in a future episode with Katie Cross.
So fun. I love that stuff. It's like candy.
You and I maybe have different definitions of candy, but
probably not many people think this is fun.
No, I think it's great. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this and like looking for topic. We want to talk about things that we want to talk about also, right? So it's not that we're going to invite people on and, not enjoy the things that we're talking about because I want to sit here and like get super excited about everything too. So.
Well, and it's back to if we're not excited about it, the audience watching this is definitely not going to listen.
Yeah.
Because
so if you guys like this episode, let us know.
Yeah, definitely. Let us know if you like this episode. Obviously, everybody loves Katie Cross, so we're not worried about you liking her. But it's one of those things that, it's good feedback to know. And if there's anything you want us to delve into more too, let us know. Katie, thank you again for joining us. Unless anybody's got anything parting words wise.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun. You guys are awesome.
It was an absolute blast, and we always love hanging out with you. For those, for the closer here, anything that we have for Katie, her website, anything else she wants us to post, we'll put in the show notes. This was Worlds Asunder on the Book Career in a Year Network. Let Nick Thacker especially know if you like these episodes because we continue to be able to produce this podcast for you guys if he knows that you like it.
Thacker know that he owes you Pepsi, not us. But Karina here
he's
is sponsoring the Pepsi.
I expect a gift from Target to be landing on my porch soon.
We'll make it known.
Yeah.
We haven't even had him on yet, and we're just dragging him through the mud every episode we get a chance to.
You don't need Thacker. You don't need Thacker. It's fine.
No, but it's yeah. So thanks for tuning in. I don't know exactly when this episode will air, so we'll probably have made references, and then we'll make references to this podcast on a podcast that might appear before this one. Who knows? I haven't decided what the orders are yet. It's going to be great. I love the chaos.
We don't have a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I didn't create a timeline.
Now you will. Let's start with the timeline.
What would you go back and change?
Yeah, I would have established a timeline just so I could mess with it and figure out how to MCU my way out of all these problems. But
second draft.
There you go. But thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Well, you've done it again, audience. You've made it through another episode of Worlds Asunder. This time, part 2 of the one with Katie Cross. We hope you got some good takeaways in world building. I mean, that's what the show's all about, right? Make sure to go nominate and vote for the Dragon Awards before the end of August. As always, thanks for stopping by. Links for our authors and where you can find them next are going to be in the show notes, where they always are. And next time, we'll be hosting John R. Osborne in #BringOsBeer. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And thanks again for helping us tear the worlds asunder. We'll see you next time.